In a world where the pressure to be seen, heard, and noticed is constant, it's easy to overlook the quiet power of stillness. The ancient Stoics understood this deeply. True presence does not demand attention. It radiates from calm clarity, from the subtle strength of someone who moves through life with purpose, composure, and restraint. There is a magnetism in restraint, a quiet authority in those who act thoughtfully, letting presence speak where words are unnecessary. Strength is not measured by what you display to others, but by the mastery you cultivate within. To act with intention, to align your choices with your values, to let every gesture and pause reflect who you truly are. This is where influence is born. Each decision becomes a reflection of character, each moment a chance to demonstrate wisdom quietly yet undeniably. The Stoic path reminds us that real power is subtle, grounded, and enduring. It arises from authenticity and self-control, not from noise, spectacle, or superficial performance. When you move through the world in this way, every interaction gains depth. Silence carries meaning, presence holds weight, and intentionality shapes perception. People respond not to the loudest, but to the composed, not to the frantic, but to the steady. In this alignment between inner life and outward expression, influence and attraction emerge naturally, without effort, without demand, and without artifice. Most people move through life on autopilot, reacting instinctively to opinions, criticism, and fleeting approval without pausing to consider why. Each reaction leaves a subtle mark, signaling insecurity or habit more than intention. Over time, these patterns make a person predictable, easy to read, and ultimately easy to overlook. But when you learn to pause, to measure your responses, to act deliberately, everything changes. Silence begins to carry meaning, presence gains weight, and each gesture reflects clarity of mind. Marcus Aurelius once noted that the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts, and when you choose your responses carefully, your inner life colors the way the world perceives you. By mastering your impulses, you create a quiet authority that others notice instinctively, even without words or overt displays. Restraint only works when it's grounded in authenticity. Silence without substance feels empty, but silence rooted in truth feels magnetic. Many people spend their lives adjusting themselves to fit in, changing opinions, hiding interests, filtering personality, and in doing so, they dilute their own presence. But living in alignment with your nature creates stability that no external approval can provide. It is in this space of authenticity that the power of silent attraction emerges. When you stop performing for others, when you act from principle rather than compulsion, your presence becomes compelling. People sense depth, coherence, and integrity, and they are naturally drawn to it. Presence, however, is more than showing up physically. It is being fully engaged mentally. Most interactions are diluted by distraction, checking phones, thinking ahead, or half listening. But when you focus completely, listening without interruption or anticipation, you create a rare and powerful connection. Silent attraction is less about how you are perceived and more about how you make others feel, seen, understood, valued. Emotional control amplifies this effect. In tense moments, when others react impulsively, a composed, steady presence creates an invisible gravity. People feel safe around it, drawn to the calm assurance that is increasingly rare in a reactive world. This calmness, combined with intentional restraint and authenticity, forms the core of magnetic influence. The less you reveal up front, the more naturally curiosity arises. People are drawn to depth, to layers, to that which is not immediately available. Subtlety, measured disclosure, and a touch of mystery invite engagement and attention. At the same time, this does not mean distance or coldness. True restraint is intentional, knowing when to open up and when to step back, creating a rhythm in engagement that conveys control and confidence. Alongside presence and composure, consistent self-care amplifies silent authority. The way you maintain yourself, your appearance, hygiene, even small details like a signature scent, signals self-respect and reinforces the authenticity that others intuitively notice. Emotional control is the final thread that binds silent attraction together. In situations of tension, when emotions run high, most people react impulsively. But when you remain calm, steady, and deliberate, you create a rare magnetism. Others feel it subconsciously, trusting your composure, orienting to your presence, and responding with engagement and respect. Calmness, especially in chaos, is inherently attractive because it is uncommon. Combine this with authenticity, subtlety, and consistent self-mastery, and your influence becomes effortless. You are no longer chasing attention. Your presence demands it naturally, a testament to the power of intentional, deliberate living. If you want to continue exploring these principles and deepen your understanding of presence, influence, and self-mastery, make sure to subscribe. By subscribing, you commit to observing, learning, and embodying the timeless wisdom of Stoicism, cultivating a presence that resonates beyond words and leaves a lasting impact wherever you go. True restraint holds power only when it arises from something genuine within. Silence without substance can feel hollow, like a void that invites indifference rather than curiosity. But when stillness is rooted in authenticity, it resonates. It carries weight not through noise or display, but through the quiet authority of alignment between thought, word, and action. Many move through life adjusting themselves to fit external expectations, altering opinions to match the majority, hiding interests to avoid judgment, filtering personality until only fragments remain visible. This constant performance is exhausting, mentally and emotionally, and it signals to others that the true self is negotiable. Authenticity, on the other hand, is perceptible even when it speaks softly. There is an unspoken gravity to someone who exists in alignment with their own nature, a subtle energy that draws attention without effort. Living in alignment with your true self is a practice the Stoics emphasized deeply. When your thoughts, values, and actions are coherent, there is a stability that no external approval can shake. It is a presence that emanates naturally, commanding attention not through force, but through quiet consistency. The person who acts from this inner foundation no longer seeks validation, and in letting go of performance, they paradoxically become more visible. Their words carry more weight because they are grounded, their gestures are deliberate, and their silence communicates what constant speech cannot. Epictetus taught that the measure of a person is found not in their ability to impress others, but in their mastery of self. And in this mastery lies a magnetic authority that cannot be manufactured. Consider how often people expend their energy attempting to shape perception rather than embodying it. The over-explainer, the one who constantly seeks approval, inevitably signals uncertainty. Others sense it, and attention drifts. But the individual who no longer performs does not require validation. They respond from principle, from clarity of purpose, from a place of internal alignment. There is a coherence in their presence that draws others naturally, a kind of silent gravity. When people observe someone who is not compelled to perform, they are subconsciously invited to engage on a deeper level, to recognize the alignment between internal conviction and external behavior. This is the essence of silent attraction. It is cultivated, not through flamboyance, but through integrity and restraint. The subtle power of authenticity is reinforced by everyday choices. How you express yourself, the consistency with which you uphold your values, and the way you navigate social expectations all communicate your internal state. Silence backed by genuine self-knowledge becomes a medium through which authority, trustworthiness, and magnetism are conveyed. The individual who has cultivated this quality does not need to draw attention. Their presence alone shapes perception. There is an almost gravitational pull in someone who embodies their values without compromise, whose every action reflects deliberation and purpose. This is why those who stop performing, often find themselves noticed more, their interactions valued more deeply, and their influence expanded. Authenticity also allows for selective engagement. It creates a space in which interactions are meaningful because they are intentional. By embodying your principles consistently, you establish boundaries that communicate self-respect and discernment. Others intuitively recognize that your presence is rooted in substance rather than performance, and this recognition generates both respect and attraction. Over time, the accumulation of deliberate actions, considered words, and measured restraint constructs an aura that naturally draws attention. People are drawn to reliability and depth, to the coherence that emerges when internal alignment is mirrored externally. Psychologically, this dynamic functions because humans are wired to detect authenticity. Constant attempts to perform signal inconsistency, prompting subconscious distrust or disengagement. Conversely, alignment between inner state and outward behavior signals reliability, competence, and confidence. Carl Jung observed that people are drawn to wholeness and depth, to that which reflects integrity and self-awareness. When silence is infused with substance, it communicates exactly this, a coherence that is felt before it is consciously understood. The quiet person becomes magnetic, precisely because their presence conveys mastery, composure, and clarity. The discipline required for authentic restraint is significant but deeply rewarding. It demands self-reflection, awareness of impulses, and the courage to act according to principle rather than expectation. It requires the patience to withhold immediate reaction, to evaluate circumstances, and to respond intentionally. Each deliberate choice reinforces the internal architecture of authenticity, creating a consistency of presence that others perceive immediately. The person who embodies this discipline does not perform. They live in alignment with their values, and that alignment resonates outward, producing influence and attraction naturally. Living authentically also reshapes perception over time. Those who observe a consistent and principled presence begin to recognize and anticipate stability, reliability, and integrity. Actions no longer require justification because they reflect internal conviction. The weight of intentionality, the coherence between thought and behavior, becomes a defining feature of the individual. Others respond not to volume, gesture, or display, but to the subtle authority that emerges from alignment with self. This is a form of influence that is both subtle and profound, shaping interactions through quiet presence rather than spectacle. Restraint, when grounded in authenticity, fosters respect and trust. It signals that the individual is self-contained, guided by principle, and unaffected by transient opinion. The freedom that emerges from this alignment allows one to act from a place of deliberate choice rather than reactive compulsion. Interactions become richer, more meaningful, and more impactful because they originate from substance rather than performance. By mastering the balance between action and restraint, the individual cultivates a presence that communicates authority, depth, and magnetism effortlessly. In every sphere of life, social, professional, and personal, the consequences of authentic restraint are cumulative. Each deliberate choice, each thoughtful pause, each instance of integrity reinforces the perception of a person who is reliable, principled, and grounded. Others naturally gravitate toward such individuals, drawn by the consistency of their actions and the depth of their character. What is often overlooked is that the true power of silent attraction lies not in the moments of visibility, but in the constant alignment of self behind the scenes. The culmination of this practice is freedom. Freedom from external validation, from the compulsion to perform, and from the restless pursuit of approval. Authentic restraint allows one to navigate interactions with clarity, authority, and composure. The attraction that arises from this presence is not superficial or fleeting. It is enduring, grounded in character, and expressed in every subtle gesture, deliberate action, and measured word. The individual who stops performing does not need to demand attention. Their authenticity ensures that it is drawn naturally, consistently, and irresistibly. In the end, the power of restraint is inseparable from authenticity. Silence becomes compelling, presence becomes magnetic, and influence flows naturally from integrity. By ceasing the endless performance, by aligning thought and action, and by embodying the principles that define your character, you cultivate a presence that is quietly irresistible. Attention follows, not because it is sought, but because it is deserved. The discipline to stop performing is the discipline to be real, and it is in that reality that the strongest form of attraction quietly resides. The way you move through the world communicates more than any words ever could. When you stop performing, when the need to impress or explain yourself diminishes, people begin to read the unspoken. Every subtle shift in posture, the steadiness of your gait, the calm with which you enter a space, all of it conveys meaning before a single syllable is uttered. This is the language of presence, a vocabulary written in the tension or relaxation of muscles, in the cadence of steps, in the energy you radiate. People sense it instinctively. They perceive alignment between thought and action, coherence between intention and expression. It is here, in the realm of silent communication, that influence begins to emerge naturally, effortlessly, and in ways that no overt assertion can replicate. The subtle language of the body is more persuasive than speech because it is difficult to fake. Nervousness, uncertainty, and inconsistency manifest almost immediately in posture and movement. Conversely, when a person moves from a grounded sense of self, from clarity of mind and purpose, their presence exudes a quiet authority. This authority does not require explanation or justification. It is felt. Carl Jung explored the idea that human attention is drawn to coherence and integrity, and the individual whose external comportment reflects internal alignment naturally attracts interest and engagement. Silence and stillness, in this context, are not emptiness. They are vessels of influence, amplifying every word that is chosen to be spoken. Consider the difference between those who rush to occupy attention and those who allow space to exist around them. The former overwhelms, the latter captivates. When you step into a room with calm and measured motion, people orient toward you instinctively. Your actions signal deliberation, your pauses convey discernment, and the natural rhythm of your movements communicates balance. The observer registers these cues unconsciously, forming an impression of reliability, competence, and magnetism that is far more lasting than anything conveyed through hurried speech or performative display. This mastery of presence is subtle but profound. It requires acute self-awareness, an understanding of how the body conveys internal states, and the ability to synchronize thought and action. By cultivating deliberate posture, steady gestures, and measured pacing, you communicate more about your character than endless verbal explanations ever could. Seneca described the power of restraint in behavior, emphasizing that true wisdom manifests not only in thought, but in the consistency of action. By moving with quiet certainty, you embody the principle that composure and intentionality are as compelling as any argument or display. The interplay between stillness and action enhances perception of credibility and influence. When speech is interspersed with deliberate pauses, when gestures are measured rather than impulsive, attention is naturally heightened. Each word gains significance, each movement communicates purpose. The balance between silence and action becomes a rhythm that draws people in, invites listening, and establishes authority without overt effort. People lean in, not because they are compelled, but because the coherence of presence encourages engagement. The individual who embodies this balance exercises a form of influence that is both subtle and undeniable. This practice extends beyond the mere mechanics of movement. It is a reflection of self-possession, of emotional regulation, and of alignment with one's principles. The body becomes a mirror of the mind, translating internal clarity into external perception. Marcus Aurelius emphasized the importance of congruence between thought and action, suggesting that authenticity manifests most powerfully when internal conviction is expressed outwardly. In mastering the interplay of silence, posture, and motion, one creates a presence that is consistent, compelling, and magnetic, reinforcing the depth of character without reliance on words or performance. The impact of such deliberate presence is felt immediately and accumulates over time. Initial impressions are strengthened by the subtle cues conveyed through controlled movement and measured action. Observers intuitively sense stability, reliability, and integrity. The person who moves with quiet certainty communicates a confidence that does not need validation. It creates it. Interactions become more engaging, dialogue more meaningful, and influence more profound. Through consistent practice, deliberate embodiment of calm authority becomes second nature, and silent attraction manifests as a natural consequence of authenticity, mastery, and alignment. Ultimately, the power of presence is inseparable from the internal mastery that produces it. Every step, every gesture, every pause becomes a vehicle for influence when it is rooted in coherence between inner thought and outward expression. Individuals who cultivate this mastery of body and motion do not seek attention. They command it effortlessly through quiet authority. The resonance of calm, grounded, and deliberate presence shapes perception, fosters trust, and draws others in without the need for spectacle. It is through this alignment, through the silent language of the body, that one becomes magnetic, compelling, and quietly unforgettable. Silence is often misunderstood as a void, something to be avoided or filled, yet it functions as a conduit for presence and impact. When you allow moments of quiet, you create a space for thought, reflection, and observation, both for yourself and for those around you. The unsaid communicates as much, if not more, than words themselves. Carl Jung observed that the power of what is unexpressed can shape perception and influence behavior in ways that speech alone cannot. A measured pause signals confidence, self-control, and discernment. It allows the listener to engage actively, filling the gaps with attention and interpretation, heightening the impact of every subsequent word. Silence becomes a tool of influence, subtle yet profound, commanding attention through restraint rather than volume. Consider how interactions unfold when silence is embraced rather than avoided. Most people rush to fill conversational space, offering explanations, justifications, and opinions without restraint. This habitual overcommunication often obscures meaning and diminishes presence. In contrast, someone comfortable in silence communicates through intention rather than compulsion. Each phrase becomes precise, each gesture deliberate. The observer perceives not just what is said, but the deliberate thought that precedes it. This creates a sense of authority and gravity, an invisible structure of influence that draws others in and encourages engagement. The ability to wield silence in this way transforms ordinary conversation into an exchange of significance and presence. The strategic use of silence enhances both perception and connection. When you speak less but with intention, listeners lean in, attentive and engaged, aware that what you do say carries weight. Every word becomes a focal point, amplified by the restraint that precedes it. Oversaturation of speech, by contrast, dilutes meaning, tires the mind, and often alienates the listener. Silence frames significance. It structures the conversational experience, creating a rhythm where each contribution matters. Those who master this rhythm convey not only competence but also depth, a quality that invites both curiosity and respect. The subtlety of deliberate silence is reinforced by posture and presence. When paired with a calm, grounded demeanor, each pause communicates stability and confidence. Observers unconsciously read not only your words, but the space you occupy, the steadiness of your gestures, and the intentionality of your movements. The combination of measured speech and deliberate stillness conveys authority without demand. Seneca remarked that the value of restraint lies in its ability to enhance perception and cultivate respect. In conversation, the silence between words functions as this form of restraint, magnifying the effect of speech while communicating mastery of self. Deliberate silence also creates psychological space for others, fostering engagement and attentiveness. By refraining from filling every pause, you allow the listener to process, reflect, and invest in the exchange. This promotes a deeper connection as the conversation becomes collaborative rather than performative. The balance between speaking and silence establishes a rhythm that signals thoughtfulness, awareness, and integrity. It transforms interaction into a meaningful exchange rather than a barrage of words, inviting others to participate fully and respond with care. The impact of measured silence extends beyond perception to influence. When others recognize that your words are chosen rather than reflexive, they assign greater credibility and importance to what you say. Each statement carries the weight of consideration. Each pause communicates deliberation. Marcus Aurelius noted that true judgment arises from measured thought, suggesting that deliberate expression is a reflection of wisdom and insight. In the context of conversation, this means that what is spoken resonates with authority, and what is left unspoken draws attention, intrigue, and respect. Mastering silence requires awareness and self-discipline. It demands that you resist the impulse to speak merely to fill a void or assert presence. By cultivating the ability to pause, to observe, and to respond with intent, you strengthen not only your influence, but also your internal composure. The external perception of authority and magnetism is the natural outcome of internal alignment. Every carefully measured response reinforces confidence and credibility, demonstrating mastery over both communication and self. The subtle power of silence, when cultivated, becomes an enduring tool for connection and influence. Over time, comfort with silence transforms the dynamics of all interactions. Conversations become more thoughtful, meaningful, and impactful. Listeners become more attentive, engaged, and receptive. Your presence, amplified by deliberate pauses and careful speech, communicates authority, authenticity, and intelligence. The attraction created in this way is not superficial or performative. It is rooted in the consistent alignment of internal mastery with external expression. Silence, when embraced and wielded intentionally, becomes a conduit for influence, connection, and magnetic presence, elevating every interaction through restraint, intention, and authenticity. Presence is a force that moves beyond mere physical existence. It is not enough to occupy a space, to show up and nod along, to move through the motions of interaction. True presence demands full engagement, a conscious attunement to the moment, to the person before you, and to the unspoken energy that threads through every exchange. Most encounters are diluted by distraction, eyes drifting to a screen, minds racing ahead to the next thought, attention fractured and shallow. In such spaces, communication loses depth, and connection becomes fleeting, superficial, and forgettable. But when someone offers their complete attention, when their mind aligns fully with their body and with the moment at hand, a rare resonance emerges. This is not a skill acquired through performance, but cultivated through mindfulness, self-mastery, and the intentional direction of awareness. The rare quality of true presence transforms interactions in ways that are subtle yet profound. Consider a moment in which another person's focus rests entirely on you, listening without interruption, without judgment, and without the rush to respond. It is a feeling of being acknowledged, of having your words and existence recognized on a level deeper than casual conversation. Carl Jung wrote about the significance of attentive presence, describing how the psyche of an individual responds to engagement that is authentic and undivided. When attention is given fully, it creates a mirror in which one feels seen, understood, and valued. This attention carries a gravity that influences perception, fosters trust, and cultivates connection, all without a single attempt at persuasion. Presence is inseparable from the practice of self-regulation and awareness. It requires mastery over the compulsion to distract oneself, to project, or to perform. Epictetus suggested that we are not disturbed by events themselves, but by our judgments of them, implying that attention, focus, and engagement are under our own control. When you cultivate the ability to direct your mental energy deliberately toward another person, you convey respect, integrity, and authenticity. This is the essence of silent attraction, the power to influence perception not by words or gestures alone, but by the quality and depth of attention you offer, the stillness and intentionality you embody in your presence. Human connection is deeply affected by presence. Most social interactions are transactional, perfunctory, and fragmented. When someone fully engages with you, they validate your existence in ways that words cannot replicate. The sense of being fully heard generates a profound emotional resonance, a feeling that your contributions matter, that your presence is significant. Aristotle observed that the highest form of virtue involves excellence in action that reflects character, implying that presence itself, when authentic, becomes a conduit for virtue. By being fully present, one demonstrates alignment of intention, thought, and action, creating an invisible yet compelling force that draws others closer and fosters deeper connection. The cultivation of presence extends beyond mere listening. It manifests in subtle cues, posture that conveys openness and receptivity, eye contact that communicates sincerity, micro-expressions that reflect attentiveness, and gestures that reinforce engagement. These signals, when consistent, create an aura of reliability and depth. People instinctively calibrate to this presence, responding with trust, curiosity, and empathy. Silence becomes meaningful within this framework, not as a void, but as a space that enhances observation, reflection, and understanding. The person who embodies full presence communicates more than words ever could, inviting others into an interaction that is measured, thoughtful, and resonant. The interplay between presence and silence creates a powerful dynamic. Speaking less, listening more, and allowing the weight of undistracted attention to carry meaning transforms ordinary exchanges into experiences of value. Each word spoken in such a space resonates more profoundly because it is framed by intentionality and undivided focus. The observer feels the rarity of this attention, sensing that it is not casual, fleeting, or superficial, but deliberate, thoughtful, and sincere. Presence, in this way, becomes a force that draws people in, not through performance or showmanship, but through authenticity and mindfulness. True presence also cultivates empathy. By engaging fully with another's words, emotions, and expressions, you internalize their perspective and communicate validation at a fundamental level. This is the essence of being understood and valued, the subtle art of connection that transcends superficial interaction. The ability to respond with clarity, consideration, and calmness arises naturally when attention is complete and undivided. Plato suggested that understanding and engagement are inseparable, implying that deep listening and attentive focus create the conditions for authentic connection. Presence, therefore, is both the medium and the message of silent attraction. This depth of presence also transforms the self. By practicing undistracted engagement, you cultivate patience, mindfulness, and intentionality, reinforcing the alignment between internal thought and external action. The individual who masters presence becomes aware of the rhythm and dynamics of human interaction, understanding the flow of conversation, the subtleties of expression, and the impact of attention on perception. This mastery extends beyond interpersonal engagement, shaping behavior, enhancing influence, and fostering authenticity across contexts. Marcus Aurelius noted that careful attention to one's own mind and actions is the foundation of wisdom, and in cultivating presence, the same principle applies outwardly to influence interactions meaningfully. The magnetic quality of authentic presence lies in its rarity. In a world of distraction, haste, and fragmented attention, someone who offers their full focus becomes remarkable. People respond to this attentiveness instinctively, forming connections that are deeper, more genuine, and more enduring. Presence shapes not only perception, but also emotional experience, making others feel validated, respected, and understood. It is a central component of silent attraction because it communicates substance, integrity, and engagement without effort, performance, or verbosity. Ultimately, cultivating presence is a practice that requires awareness, patience, and discipline. It demands the ability to quiet internal chatter, to resist the urge to perform, and to align attention deliberately with the moment and the person before you. The resulting magnetism is subtle yet profound, influencing perception, fostering connection, and creating trust. Through sustained engagement, intentional silence, and mindful focus, presence becomes an instrument of silent attraction, shaping interactions and leaving a lasting impression on everyone who experiences it. The person who embodies this presence makes others feel truly seen, understood, and valued. And it is this rare quality that defines the deepest form of influence and connection. Humans are naturally drawn to depth. We are wired to investigate, to piece together patterns, to fill in gaps. When someone presents themselves fully in one sweep, the opportunity for engagement diminishes because there is nothing left to interpret. But when subtlety is employed, when information is revealed incrementally, the observer begins to participate in the construction of meaning. They lean in not because of what is forced, but because of what invites curiosity. Carl Jung spoke of the unconscious allure of mystery, noting that the unseen and unexpressed holds psychological weight that often surpasses the overtly displayed. There is a richness to human perception that thrives on discovery, and by offering only portions of yourself at a time, you engage that faculty naturally and effectively. This sense of mystery is compounded by deliberate restraint in social interaction. Each pause, each measured response, each gesture that is carefully considered communicates that there is more beneath the surface. The observer senses intentionality, depth, and substance. The magnetism of the unknown does not require theatrics. It arises from the alignment of presence, authenticity, and controlled self-expression. People intuitively recognize that the individual is not desperate for attention or validation, and in that recognition, their curiosity is piqued. The balance of revealing and withholding information creates tension, engagement, and focus in a way that effortless openness rarely can. The principle extends beyond simple conversation. Consider the impression made through actions, through subtle cues, through the rhythm of engagement. Each carefully chosen disclosure, each moment of silence, each element left unexplained signals a level of sophistication and self-possession. Epictetus reminded us that control over what we reveal and how we act is a cornerstone of personal freedom. By mastering the balance between exposure and restraint, you convey authority, intentionality, and intrigue simultaneously. The less you force clarity or over-communicate, the more others project significance onto your presence, creating a perception of depth that is inherently magnetic. Social psychology reinforces this dynamic. People invest more attention in phenomena that are partially obscured or incomplete because the mind seeks closure. When someone presents only fragments of their story or character, observers engage cognitively and emotionally to reconcile the unknown, filling in details with imagination, interpretation, and personal inference. This process fosters a deeper sense of connection and engagement than if everything were laid bare. The art of cultivating presence and influence lies in leveraging this natural curiosity without manipulation, allowing the intrigue to emerge from authenticity rather than artifice. Mystery also enhances perceived value. When something or someone is immediately understandable, it is quickly assimilated and often forgotten. The subtlety of delayed revelation creates anticipation. Each interaction carries the potential for discovery, and the observer's attention remains engaged because there is always more to perceive, more to consider. Aristotle wrote of the allure of completeness and balance, suggesting that harmony in presentation draws the mind naturally. In the context of silent attraction, harmony is achieved not through overexposure, but through the calibrated presentation of self, allowing elements to unfold over time. The power of partial disclosure is magnified by emotional resonance. When you reveal only what is necessary, the details carry greater significance. Listeners, observers, and peers begin to attach meaning to the information they receive, interpreting it through the lens of curiosity and relevance. The emotional investment grows because understanding is not handed over fully, but earned through attention and engagement. Presence, in this sense, becomes both participatory and compelling. Each interaction provides an opportunity for connection, but only if the individual exercises the discernment to reveal incrementally, allowing depth and intrigue to develop naturally. Over time, this deliberate withholding shapes social perception. People come to associate your presence with insight, deliberation, and depth. They anticipate engagement because each interaction carries potential discovery. Silence becomes meaningful, absence becomes noticeable, and subtle cues become amplified. The individual who has mastered this balance does not need to perform. They are compelling because they invite exploration. The engagement of others is not coerced. It is inspired by the perception of depth, coherence, and authenticity that is woven into every action and every moment of measured revelation. Ultimately, the magnetic pull of partial revelation is a reflection of alignment and self-mastery. The less you rush to display everything, the more you allow others to engage actively, to fill in gaps, to invest attention and curiosity. Each interaction becomes richer, each presence more compelling, because the mind and emotions of others are drawn into completing the picture you present. This is not superficial intrigue, but the natural outcome of authentic presence, deliberate restraint, and thoughtful engagement. Silent attraction thrives in this space where the unseen, the unexplained, and the unspoken convey as much meaning as any action or word, creating a layered, enduring influence that engages both perception and imagination. By allowing mystery to coexist with authenticity, you transform ordinary interactions into experiences of depth. Each measured pause, each subtle disclosure, each deliberate gesture reinforces the impression of coherence, competence, and magnetic presence. Attention lingers because curiosity is invited, not satiated. Engagement is deepened because the observer becomes an active participant in discovery. In this interplay of revelation and restraint, influence is achieved without effort, impact without performance, and attraction without demand, forming the foundation of presence that is quietly compelling, intellectually stimulating, and emotionally resonant. Restraint is often misunderstood. Many equate holding back with detachment, with emotional distance, with coldness. They think that by closing themselves off, by revealing less, they become mysterious or authoritative. Yet true restraint is nothing like that. It is not the absence of engagement, but the deliberate calibration of it. It is the art of choosing when and how to open yourself, of knowing that every interaction is a choice and that not every impulse requires expression. To confuse distance with intentionality is to miss the essence of influence. Presence and magnetism are not born from shutting people out, but from the subtle clarity of knowing when to engage and when to hold back. This is where subtle power emerges. in the rhythm of giving and withholding, of participating fully without dissolving into compulsion, of being present without being overexposed. Being intentional requires a deep awareness of self and circumstance. It demands that you perceive the boundaries of your own energy and attention and act accordingly. When someone exercises this form of restraint, they communicate without words a sense of control and coherence. Others may not consciously analyze it, yet they feel it. They sense a reliability, a consistency, a rhythm to interactions that creates trust. Epictetus taught that the foundation of freedom lies in mastery over oneself, and in practice, that mastery is expressed in the balance between engagement and withdrawal. To act with intention is to act from principle rather than compulsion, to measure presence rather than scatter it, and to offer attention without losing oneself in the act of giving it. Intentional restraint is not a passive posture. It is an active, deliberate practice. It requires constant observation, awareness of social cues, and assessment of the context in which you operate. The difference between unavailability and intentionality lies precisely in this awareness. One shuts down and disconnects. The other observes, calibrates, and chooses the precise moments to participate fully. The result is a rhythm of interaction that conveys composure, insight, and depth. People are drawn to those who can navigate this rhythm naturally, sensing the coherence and clarity behind measured engagement. The power of such presence is rarely articulated, yet it shapes perception profoundly. Consider the effect of timing in communication and action. When you respond to every prompt or query immediately, you communicate urgency and, at times, neediness. But when you pause, when you choose the moment of engagement carefully, your actions gain gravity. The observer interprets this not as aloofness, but as mastery, self-possession, and discretion. There is an inherent magnetism in someone who acts intentionally, who opens selectively, who speaks and participates only when alignment, timing, and purpose intersect. Aristotle reflected on the harmony of action and character, noting that the measure of virtue is expressed in proportion and balance. In social interaction, this principle translates into the deliberate rhythm of engagement, where measured presence creates influence without force. Balance is the cornerstone of this practice. The Stoics emphasized moderation and equilibrium, understanding that extremes, either overexposure or complete withdrawal, undermine influence and authenticity. True restraint lies between these extremes. It is neither constant visibility nor total absence, but a conscious management of presence. Every decision to engage, every choice to remain silent, reinforces an underlying coherence that others perceive intuitively. It creates an invisible architecture of interaction, a structure in which curiosity, trust, and respect can flourish. This balance signals mastery, both internally and externally, producing a quiet authority that does not demand acknowledgement but cannot be ignored. The subtlety of intentional engagement is evident in emotional tone, body language, and responsiveness. When someone participates deliberately, their energy is aligned, their gestures resonate with purpose, and their focus communicates attention that is not performative but authentic. The observer experiences a clarity and stability that contrasts sharply with the noise and reactivity of those who respond indiscriminately. By offering attention and participation selectively, you signal a depth and reliability that cannot be fabricated. The magnetic pull of this presence emerges naturally as a consequence of coherence, intentionality, and measured engagement. Intentional restraint also enhances perception of value. When engagement is measured, each interaction carries significance. Words, gestures, and attention are treated as resources, deployed with awareness and purpose. Listeners sense the difference between interactions that are automatic and those that are considered, and they respond accordingly. Presence in this way becomes an instrument of influence. Seneca observed that self-mastery and thoughtful conduct are the hallmarks of virtue. By regulating when and how you participate, you convey mastery without verbal assertion, authority without force, and substance without performance. The observer interprets these cues as depth, consistency, and trustworthiness, all of which heighten attraction and influence. Self-awareness is essential in cultivating this form of restraint. It requires the capacity to monitor internal impulses, to distinguish between reactions driven by compulsion and those motivated by principle. It also demands perception of external context, understanding the energy, attention, and receptivity of others in order to engage meaningfully. The individual who masters this awareness communicates subtle authority simply through the choice to engage intentionally. Over time, this practice produces a rhythm of interaction that others unconsciously recognize and respond to with trust, respect, and fascination. Ultimately, intentional restraint is a practice of rhythm, balance, and alignment. It is not about withholding for effect or cultivating distance for manipulation. It is about acting in accordance with principle, timing, and awareness. By choosing when and how to open yourself, you create a presence that is both authentic and magnetic. The balance between engagement and withholding signals mastery over self and environment, producing influence without force, connection without desperation, and attraction without performance. Presence, calibrated through intentionality, becomes a force that resonates, shapes perception, and draws others naturally toward depth, clarity, and coherence. Through this disciplined practice, restraint transforms from a simple behavioral choice into a hallmark of silent authority. Every moment of selective engagement, every pause, every considered word reinforces a perception of composure, reliability, and substance. People respond to this alignment, to the consistency of character manifested through deliberate action, and to the subtle power of presence that emerges naturally from balance and intentionality. By navigating the interplay of openness and withholding, you cultivate influence, trust, and attraction that are enduring, compelling, and deeply rooted in authenticity. The way you care for yourself communicates volumes before a single word is spoken. It is not the flashy display or the desperate attempt to impress that commands attention, but the quiet, consistent choices you make every day. The effort you put into your appearance, your hygiene, the way you carry yourself, and even the subtle details like a signature scent are all signals of self-respect and personal integrity. These choices are not about vanity or superficiality. They are a reflection of how you value your own life, your own body, and your own mind. When someone invests in themselves in this intentional, understated way, it radiates outward, shaping the way others perceive and respond to them. People can sense it, even if they cannot articulate why. There is a natural magnetism in consistency and care that does not need to be announced. It speaks for itself. Consider the way small details accumulate into perception. The neatness of your clothing, the attention to grooming, the subtle alignment of style with personality, all of it communicates intentionality. It signals that you are aware of yourself, that you are deliberate in your choices, and that you treat yourself with the same respect you would offer to others. Carl Jung observed that the psyche responds to patterns of coherence and meaning, and the subtle messages embedded in personal presentation are interpreted on a subconscious level. When your external state reflects the care, thought, and attention you invest in yourself, observers perceive depth and reliability, drawing them in without the need for forceful demonstration or verbal assertion. Self-care in this context is inseparable from self-mastery. It is not indulgent, nor is it performative. It is an extension of discipline, a visible manifestation of internal alignment. The person who moves through the world with consistency and care communicates authority, stability, and presence effortlessly. Each action, from how one dresses to how one maintains daily routines, reinforces a quiet confidence that others recognize and respect. Epictetus taught that freedom and power are cultivated through mastery of oneself, and self-care is a natural expression of this mastery. The individual who treats themselves with respect projects a subtle authority that enhances silent attraction. The impact of these consistent practices extends beyond appearance. How you maintain yourself influences the way you interact with the environment and with others. A person who takes care of themselves without seeking validation is more likely to exhibit composure, grace, and mindfulness in their behavior. Every movement becomes more deliberate, every gesture more intentional, and every interaction communicates an underlying coherence that is compelling. People instinctively respond to this alignment of internal discipline with external presentation, sensing the steadiness and authenticity that underlies your presence. Even the smallest elements, like a carefully chosen fragrance, a consistent grooming routine, or an understated style, contribute to the perception of self-respect and personal integrity. These details are amplified by the consistency with which they are maintained. Aristotle wrote that virtue lies in habitual practice, in the repetition of deliberate and aligned action. Similarly, the repeated attention to self-care cultivates an aura of reliability and thoughtfulness, reinforcing the silent authority of presence. Observers may not notice each specific element consciously, but they perceive the overall effect. Someone who embodies care, consistency, and intentionality. The psychological effects of self-respect are equally profound. People are drawn to those who value themselves because it signals internal stability, emotional intelligence, and reliability. Self-care conveys a message that the individual is capable of responsibility, discipline, and thoughtful action. Seneca emphasized that our actions reflect the quality of our character, and in attending to oneself with deliberate care, one communicates the depth of self-regard that forms the foundation of character. This careful cultivation of personal presence translates directly into influence, attraction, and trustworthiness. The effects of intentional self-care are subtle yet pervasive. It shapes social perception, influences interpersonal dynamics, and reinforces the silent signals of authority and competence. Every choice, whether it is the alignment of clothing, the scent carried, or the small gestures of composure, contributes to a coherent image of integrity. Others respond to this coherence instinctively, drawn to individuals who exhibit self-respect and deliberate care. This is the essence of silent attraction, the way external attention to self communicates internal strength and consistency, creating resonance that is both perceptible and compelling. Self-care also establishes boundaries and communicates values. By maintaining oneself with quiet intentionality, one signals that attention, energy, and respect are not expendable or easily surrendered. This fosters a sense of respect from others who unconsciously recognize the discipline and intentionality behind these choices. It also reinforces internal alignment, cultivating confidence, awareness, and presence that permeates interactions and influences perception. Presence and personal influence are amplified when the individual projects this subtle authority through consistency and integrity. Ultimately, the act of caring for oneself quietly and consistently is a cornerstone of silent attraction. It is not about display or recognition, it is about alignment, discipline, and authenticity. Each decision regarding appearance, grooming, style, or presentation becomes a reflection of internal values, reinforcing presence and magnetism. People respond to these cues because they communicate stability, coherence, and self-possession. Through deliberate attention to self, one creates an influence that is both subtle and profound, commanding respect, engagement, and curiosity without ever demanding it. In this way, the quiet, consistent care you take of yourself becomes a silent signal of authority, integrity, and magnetic presence that resonates far beyond the superficial. The power of composure lies not in suppression, but in deliberate regulation. It is not about ignoring emotion or pretending that tension does not exist. Rather, it is the ability to acknowledge feeling, to understand its source, and to prevent it from hijacking action or judgment. Marcus Aurelius emphasized the importance of responding with reason and maintaining equanimity, teaching that the mind must remain sovereign even when the body is pressed by circumstance. When one internalizes this principle, presence becomes a stabilizing force. Others sense it immediately. A calm, measured individual imparts a quiet assurance to those around them, creating an environment where trust, focus, and engagement are amplified simply by the consistency of emotional steadiness. In practice, emotional control manifests in subtle ways. The cadence of speech, the alignment of gestures, the evenness of tone, and the steadiness of posture all convey a sense of mastery over internal impulses. Epictetus taught that we are disturbed not by events themselves, but by our judgments and reactions to them. Applying this insight means observing external circumstances without surrendering to the instinct to react immediately. The individual who embodies this control allows situations to unfold while maintaining clarity, making choices based on principle rather than impulse. This creates an invisible yet palpable gravity that draws attention, encourages focus, and fosters respect. Calmness in chaos is rare, and rarity is inherently compelling. In a world where impulsivity, overreaction, and emotional volatility dominate, composure stands out. It signals that the person possesses self-knowledge, discipline, and resilience, traits that are unconsciously admired and sought after. Carl Jung noted that individuals are drawn to those whose inner stability contrasts with external turbulence, perceiving them as anchors of reliability and security. This dynamic extends beyond personal interactions, influencing professional settings, social circles, and even casual encounters. People naturally orient toward those who remain steady under pressure, as their presence provides a sense of assurance, predictability, and trust. The cultivation of emotional control requires awareness, reflection, and practice. It begins with recognizing the triggers that disrupt composure, understanding the habitual responses that arise, and implementing strategies to maintain balance. The individual who develops this discipline learns to pause, to breathe, to assess, and only then to act. The effect is both internal and external. Internally, the mind remains clear, rational, and focused. Externally, the body conveys calm authority, a presence that is perceived as dependable and magnetic. This alignment of thought, feeling, and action enhances silent attraction, drawing others not through charm or performance, but through consistency and strength of character. Steadiness also allows for more effective communication and decision-making. In moments of heightened tension, those who react impulsively often escalate conflict, generate confusion, or undermine credibility. Conversely, the composed individual perceives nuances, assesses risks, and acts strategically. This ability to maintain clarity amidst pressure elevates influence. Seneca noted that self-control is the foundation of virtue, suggesting that mastery over emotion is inseparable from moral and practical authority. The individual who cultivates this mastery creates a presence that commands attention effortlessly, not because of spectacle or dominance, but because their internal coherence is mirrored externally in behavior, speech, and energy. The attraction of calmness is intertwined with perception of safety and reliability. People are drawn to those who remain stable in the face of unpredictability because it signals competence and trustworthiness. A steady demeanor conveys that challenges will not provoke rash action, that interactions are measured, and that decisions are guided by insight rather than impulse. This implicit reassurance is compelling, creating a form of influence that operates beneath conscious awareness. Aristotle observed that virtue and excellence emerge from balance and rational control, principles that directly apply to the mastery of emotion. When an individual embodies these qualities, their presence becomes magnetic, attractive, and stabilizing simultaneously. Emotional control also reinforces the perception of depth and maturity. Individuals who act with measured steadiness appear thoughtful, deliberate, and self-aware. The observer interprets restraint not as passivity, but as a reflection of strength, intelligence, and character. Each response is imbued with significance because it is chosen rather than compelled. The ability to navigate high-stakes or emotionally charged situations with composure conveys that one possesses mastery over both self and circumstance. This is the essence of silent authority, influence and attraction emerging organically from internal alignment and consistent action, rather than performance or exaggeration. Moreover, calmness creates space for reflection and empathy. The individual who maintains emotional equilibrium can listen actively, assess objectively, and respond compassionately. Their steadiness allows others to express themselves without triggering defensive reactions, creating meaningful connections and fostering trust. The dynamics of influence and attraction shift fundamentally